It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Wednesday, January 8th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that just wanted the Flyers to beat the Leafs once. Can we do that?
You got one more shot.
Your Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade. I'm here with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. To keep up with our episodes and the latest Flyers news, you can follow us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, including Blue Sky, and of course, here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are continuing our Flyers at the halfway point conversation today. Yesterday, we talked about where the Flyers have been for the first half of the season. Now we're going to talk about where they need to go for the rest of the season. And of course, we'll answer your mailbag questions as we do on Wednesdays. But we got to start off with the Flyers versus Leafs. And we had talked beforehand on, answering the question if Fedotov would get the second start in a row against the Leafs. And I thought it was interesting and good that they did go that direction.
Yeah, I don't think they had a lot of choice. Like if you just want to see where he's at, you got to play him. So at least they played him.
Yeah, I just wasn't 100% sure, given the two games in a row against the same team, if they would want to
Yeah,
give that Leafs offense another look at Fedotov now having had a game under their belt against him. And I don't think ultimately that was the reason
that
why the
wasn't the
Flyers
reason.
lost.
No.
No, it wasn't. And I thought Fedotov played better in this game
Yeah.
overall. I thought he was a little bit more solid, less flaily. Still some flail, don't get me wrong, because
Oh,
that's
there's
his
always going to
game.
be some until he's fully
Yeah.
comfortable in this league. Yeah.
Absolutely. But I think that really, like, what it comes down to, at least for me, is they took too many penalties. And then when they were given power plays, they just didn't capitalize on them.
Didn't do that. Some key defensive breakdowns. They're still missing the net. Like, the Leafs are a team that kind of does rope-a-dope you for a while, but they always show up in the third period. And they are a team that is just notoriously good at stealing games in the third period.
Hmm.
And so, this was one where I really did have to question the coaching staff why Noah Cates is out there late uh, against Austin Matthews with a faceoff. And then, of course, he lost it. And he had been losing to Matthews mostly the whole game. At one point, I looked, he was 46%. So I just, you have Sean Couturier, and if you don't want to use him during the game against Matthews, you should use him towards the end of the game where at least he's a bigger, stronger guy where he has a chance at least to, if nothing else, block off Matthews. Like on Matthews' goal, Cates couldn't cover him. I mean, he was, a step behind him. Like Matthews, once he gets the stick and he fakes once or
Yeah.
twice, he lost Cates easy.
Right. And I think that Austin Matthews being Austin Matthews is just something that the Flyers, like, what are they going to do? Right. I mean,
Right. But my point is, I get what you're saying, but in a half court offense, Sean Couturier can play defense or at
oh,
least
sure.
be better disruptively, and he should be out there
Sure.
against them.
Yeah, 100%. I think, it was worth trying and using selectively throughout the game, putting Cates out there because that line has been excellent defensively.
Hmm.
And so you want to put your best defensive line out there against the Matthews line, like no question. But at a certain point when those faceoffs aren't going your way, you do have to make the change. And
You do.
I think that's an adjustment problem that, sometimes they adjust really well and sometimes they don't. And I feel like this was just they don't
Yeah,
adjust
this
well
just smacked
kind
of
of game.
stubbornness. Like, hey, we like what Cates is doing. We're just going to force him to do this. And it's like, there's a thing. A guy can only do so much as far as what
Hmm.
his ability is and who he's matching up against. And no matter how hot Noah Cates might be, matching up against Matthews is too much.
Yeah, I think so. I also think Wall was fantastic in net
Sure, yeah, he's
for the
good.
Leafs. And I think, the Flyers defensively played real well in this game, all things
Most of them
being
did. Jamie
equal.
Drysdale did not.
Well, yes, I think there is some of that to be said, but as a team, they played well
Mhm.
defensively. We saw the Leafs only had 17 shots in this game. I mean, that's pretty stellar against a
Oh,
team
sure. I mean, they
like the
blocked a lot of
Leafs.
shots, but, again, if you're gonna use guys in
Well,
key
yeah,
situations, I can't have Jamie Drysdale out there in a key defensive situation. Now, on offense, if he's gonna draw a penalty, yeah, that's just dumb, and it happens, or some people didn't think it was a penalty, okay, whatever. But he did let Matthews behind him too. And
yes.
so, at some point, again, they have to address this and either change his role on the ice, limit his 5-on-5, or sit him for a while because he's not playing good hockey.
Yeah, do you know who was playing good hockey though? Is Cam York. I thought
Yeah,
he had a much, much better
yeah,
game than I've seen from him recently. I thought he was appropriately aggressive offensively. He made a great play that led to one of the Flyers' goals. With some real stubbornness, I think, in the offensive zone. That was, it was a well-earned assist, secondary
yeah.
assist he got, which are rare in my opinion, well-earned secondary
You know what?
assists.
I'm
But
not. I don't feel that way. I've spoken to enough people and players. They all count. I am not the big. Hey, that's a primary assist. They don't.
mhm.
They don't separate that in the stat book, and I generally don't make a big deal out of it. You get an assist, you get an assist.
All right, that is fair. That is fair. I think, though, that generally he played well in this game, and I think that he is doing the things that Torts is asking of him,
Yeah, I
but
think so.
also sneaking in his own game too. And I think he's kind of figuring out that mix right
Yeah.
now a little bit better than he had previously. And I think that's all that Torts wants out of him.
No, I agree. I think that's what he's looking for, and then
Yeah.
Cam will be looking for a contract.
Well, that's the future Flyers problem, I guess.
Not that far
But
away.
true, true. But the second period again kind of was the burden for the Flyers in this game, taking those penalties that led to
Yep.
the Leafs goal. And I just, it is really frustrating when you have as good a first period as the Flyers had to then kind of give up on it in the second period.
It's inexplicable. I mean, yeah, I get what you're saying. Don't have an answer for that one.
Yeah, I just think it's something that it is seemed like a running joke about the Flyers in their second periods, but
Yeah.
there's something to it. And to
Yeah, it's
play like
definitely a
complete
mental thing,
games is hard.
and yeah, there's no question. I'm sure the coaching staff says, "Watch out for the second period," and I'm sure the players are like, "Yes, let's have a better second period," and they just don't. Like, it's a mental block for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. The other thing we have to talk about that Scott Laughton Matvei Michkov collision
Yeah,
because a it looked horrific, and I am glad both of them seem to be okay. Scott Laughton, of course, like kissing Mitchkoff on the helmet when
yeah.
they're both back on the bench, but it was very scary, and it seems like it's something that's been happening to the Flyers more often than it should. And like, is that a lack of communication? Is it just dumb luck? Like, I'm trying to figure out if there's like a rhyme or reason to it at this
It could
point.
be a communication thing. I mean, I there's times where I vacillate and say, I want Mitchkov to have same line mates for longer periods of time, and then there's times where he is getting lost in the shuffle in the game, and there were times where that happened again in this game. So, and it's been happening for like the last you know couple weeks. So I don't know. I think it's probably communication.
Yeah, I think, it's definitely something that they're hopefully going to address a
Yeah.
little bit, just to be a little bit more heads up, a little more aware out there, because we do not want guys getting concussions out there colliding with their own teammate, for sure. But, again, A lot of positives in this game, a couple glaring negatives that led to the loss, and very disappointed in the power play once again. I thought they had some good looks selectively, but when you look at the actual shots on goal, not really much going on there. So
Hey, they've
I
got
think
like
they,
5 people working on it, Rachel. Don't worry about it.
well, I don't know about
Remember,
that
right? They have like
anymore.
5 people
We
working on
haven't
it.
heard that in a while, so who
Right,
knows
because
what the
it's not been
latest
good.
is on that.
You're not gonna trumpet something when it's not working. That's why.
That is true. All right. Well, we are going to move forward in our Flyers at the halfway point discussion, talking about what the Flyers need to accomplish in the second half of the season. We're going to do that coming up next.
From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $250 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app gives you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. Take the Commanders on the money line. Just visit fanduel.com to join today and get started with $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com. Make playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
On tomorrow's show, we are going to preview the Flyers' next matchup against the Stars, which would be fun. We haven't seen them yet this season. And then we're going to start our predictions and our opinions on the Flyers quarter century team. If you've been paying attention, the NHL has been putting out their top teams from the last 25 years for each club going in order. The Flyers team announcement will be on Monday. And so we're going to put our heads together and see what forwards we think will make the cut for first
Or
team
we'll
and
argue a
second
lot.
team.
Either way, yeah.
I mean, I expect both. So it'll be a lot of fun. And let us know who you think should make that team. Looking at the Flyers at the halfway point, the second half of the season now begins after that loss to the Leafs. The Flyers are still in that mush of the Eastern Conference, but a little further back than they were a little while ago. And I think, the goals for this season at the beginning, we talked about them in the context of player development in terms of the roster construction and what may or may not happen at the trade deadline. And I think, as far as player development goes, the thing they have to do, I think more than anything, is continue positive development of the guys on the Cates line and Matvei Michkov. And I think there's some tweaking to do on the Michkov front.
Well, I think that's all well and good, and I think there's more development that they need to do too. I think they have to
Oh, for sure.
come to the realization that, look, there's 5 teams ahead of them right now, and the Rangers are a point behind them, played one less game, so they're in a bad spot. They're not making the playoffs, and they have to understand that if they think right now, the way the Four Nations is set up is if you wait until the trade deadline, there's literally 6 games, something like that, after the Four Nations. It's too late. And it's too late for development too then. And so at this point, if they feel like, hey, we're probably going to trade Zamula, or hey, we're going to do it. You know what I mean? Like, especially if it's not for a return and it's just for a draft pick or something like that, then do it, because then you'll open up a spot in the lineup and someone like, Helge Grans or Emil Andre can come up and show you what they can do for a good stretch of the season, not just like 10 games. That's not enough. And last year, I felt like they didn't pull the plug early enough and they let the whole season go, and that's fine. And they almost made the playoffs, but then they sort of lacked in development. There's no excuse for it this year, in
Right.
my eyes.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, you know, uh, that's where some of this goes hand in hand, right?
Hmm.
Because some of player development does involve creating space for those players to
Right.
develop,
And you still have
to your
Eric
point.
Johnson for injuries, like, he's still around, and that's fine.
Yeah, I think so. And I think, there's some problems in Lehigh Valley that we have addressed ad nauseum on this show. But I think that there are a couple of those guys, Andre and Grans, at least on the blue line, that could probably come up for some more games this season and should come up just because, again, you got to know what you got in order to
Right.
have an effective trade deadline, right?
Like me,
So,
I'd want to know what I have before I have to make a decision on Jamie
mhm,
Drysdale and if I'm ever going to extend him or not. Because right now I'm not extending him. And if I'm not extending him, I might have to trade him in the offseason. So that
yeah.
in order to do that, and again, if you can't trade Risto, we'll keep him out of this because they may not be able to for another half season.
Who, by the
So
way, we did not talk about him, but he had an excellent game
yeah,
again. Like he's
yeah.
playing real well.
He is. It's just his contract. Otherwise, teams would want him, right? But at
Right.
the end of the day, with someone like Drysdale, you have to be able to know what those other two players in Lehigh can do at the NHL level before you make a decision on Drysdale.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very, very important because I think looking at that trade deadline, you already brought up the point about four nations, and I think that's a really important aspect of this to talk about. That if the Flyers are going to make some of those deals, they're going to maybe want to make them sooner, and
Right.
that means doing all of this roster movement earlier than maybe they would have otherwise. And like I do think there's going to be almost too many trade deadlines this year as opposed to one big one at the deadline itself. But I think it's important that the Flyers are smart about this deadline given the potential big increase of the salary cap going into
Mhm.
next season, that if they're going to make space for a potential like big defenseman signing, for instance, because they don't have anybody right now,
Right.
ostensibly, like they have to be smart about it and not like eat up more cap space by having more dead cap space added
Right.
to the roster right now or added to the bank right now because they already have done that, and next year's the year they're finally going to get rid of all of that dead cap
Well,
money.
I
Like
mean, will
you
they?
can't
I
hang
don't
on it.
know. I mean, I I wonder what's happening with Ryan Johansson because if this thing gets punted to next year, then there could be dead cap space for that. Like there hasn't been a decision on that yet. So I don't know. Will it affect this season? Is it going to roll into next season? I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen.
We don't know, but like assuming that's a non-factor in terms
Okay.
of the
For
other
this argument, we
decisions.
could do that. That's fine.
Yeah,
For this
yeah,
discussion. Yeah.
I think there's not going to be any huge moves, but I do think that it's possible for them to trade a guy or two just to make some room on the roster for some of the other kids
Yep.
to move up and figure it out, and also create a little bit of extra cap space just
Right.
so that they have the room to sign that big free agent defenseman or center or whatever they decide they want to do. My preference would be for a defenseman, but I don't know
Yeah. It
what is
depends
in
who's
their
out there
heads.
and who's available. Like,
Mhm.
that's going to matter.
Yeah. Now, as far as like on the ice, in terms of things to accomplish for this team, I think that it's almost too much to ask for them to improve the power play enough to make it
It's not too
serviceable.
much to ask. It's actually the least you could ask because it's been going on for 2 years.
I mean, it's true. It's just that I feel like to want to ask for that expectation would just lead to disappointment in the end, and I'm trying
Right.
to not be
I
disappointed
got it. I got it.
there. But I do think it obviously it's been a huge thorn in the Flyers side. I think they need to continue to play well defensively and just I think figure out how more often to turn that good defense into offense. That's something that Torres talked about last year. They did it well. It's not been that way as much this year. Let's do that for the second half of the season and get as many points as we can to run out the season. I think there's some debate of do you want the Flyers to like quiet tank. I'm taking that term from quiet quitting, right?
Right.
But I'm calling it a quiet tank here. I think that that's bad for this particular group of players in the long run, given who is likely to stick around and how you want them playing.
Right. Well, I think that's one thing. I think I'm looking at the Flyers, and they're ninth in the league for most missed shots per game. Now, some of these teams, what could be misleading is like the Leafs are second. Okay, but the Leafs will have these games where they're just horrible, and then they have these other games where they score a lot, and they have 9 more goals on the year. So it tells you that they probably had some really putrid games and some other ones. But again, ninth. This is ninth out of 32 teams. It's not good. This has been a problem for 2 years now too, and it really is only. Is it marginally better than last year? Maybe, but it's not enough better.
Yeah, I think it obviously has been a huge part of this season so far, and upping the shooting percentage to be like get them to at least midway in the league by the end of the year would be great.
Yeah,
Again, as is with the case with the power play, expectations are on the floor, but let's see what we can do. I mean, honestly,
and the penalty
teams,
kill's dropping like a rock. That is another thing.
yeah, it's been playing a little better in the last couple of games. I wanna give that more time before I say it's back on track, but I think that they've been playing a little bit better, and, they have been less focused on the power kill aspect of it, and I think
Yeah.
that's helped, at least in the short term. I would like to see it back to where it was by the end of the season, just so they can kinda end on a good note there, but
Well, they're
I do
19th right
think.
now in it, where
Right.
last year
So
I think
let's
they were top 10.
correct. Correct. So I think, if we can get the Flyers moved up 5 or 6 slots on the PK by the end of the season, I think that would be good progress
That's fair.
as far as it goes. And I think this is a similar situation for the power play.
Power play is gonna change when one thing changes. I think we know what that one thing is.
We do. We absolutely do. And I'm certainly not going to ask that question anytime soon of management. But y'all have some questions for us and some comments over on our YouTube channel that were interesting that I definitely want to react to. So we are going to do that coming up next. I love going to live events, whether it's sports, music, theater, or comedy. Some of my favorite memories have been attending a Broadway show, and I've been looking forward to seeing more of them this year. Now, Game Time has made it even easier to get tickets for those favorite events with their new feature, Game Time Picks. This feature filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I was looking for tickets to an upcoming show using the app. And with those picks, I found an amazing deal. I could even see the view from my seat before buying. Their super deals are impressive as well. They offer great seats at unbeatable prices. Plus, the app's all in pricing shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. The best part, when you win, you get paid instantly. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On NHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with the code Locked On NHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, Russ. So we got some really good comments in reaction to some past shows, as well as some questions about prospects. And Carl wanted to know about Zavragin,
Mhm.
our prospect goalie over in Russia, and he wanted to know, what does the following stat tell you about Zavragin? 25 shots or more, his save percentage is 940, less than 25 shots, 870 save percentage.
Just a guy that needs to work right now, and I think a lot of goalies are like that. It's not uncommon. I mean, there's always a worry, like if a goalie hasn't faced a shot in the first 5, 6 minutes of a period, then all of a sudden he's facing the shot. I'm sure that's happened to him in some games because he's on a good team. So yeah, I think that's all that is.
Yeah, I think so. And he is a developing goaltender, right?
Yes.
It's just a matter of a guy getting used to the pro game and developing the ability to be on at all times during these intense moments and not letting your guard down. And some guys it just takes a little bit longer to adjust to that.
Yep.
Michael's 2502 made a suggestion about the goaltending situation and says, just roll with Kolosov and Fedotov until you pick top 5 in the 2025 draft. You can have young forwards and defensemen develop while a goalie loses you games, and with Torts, he can prevent them from giving up because of bad goaltending. Do you like? I just don't think this is realistic. In terms of picking top 5, I don't think that's going to happen this year. And I think that like sitting Urson, even if he comes back healthy, is like an impossibility.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
if he's hurt, that's one thing. But if he comes back, they're going to play him.
Right. Yeah. This wouldn't be fair to Sam, and they're not going to do that.
Mhm.
If they do make some trades and put in some younger guys, like we talked about, that could help. But they're probably not picking the top 5, like you said, unless they get lucky in the
Yeah,
lottery.
I think. Yeah, I mean, I'm guessing the best they're going to get at this point is about 8.
Yeah. I mean, that might be the best case scenario. But there's a lot of hockey left, so we don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Joseph DeAngelis had a comment and a question related to World Juniors.
Hmm.
We have talked about Zayde Wisdom and that we would have liked the Flyers to have drafted him.
Uh-huh.
Again, not a knock on Luchenko, but
Nope.
that's something we have talked about. So Joseph said, Wisdom did look good in World Juniors, but I felt Luchenko could have showed more if he was utilized better. Is that on the player or the coach? And your question to Breer of knowing what you know now, would you have drafted Wisdom? Are you asking that based on Luchenko's performance at World Juniors or strictly because York and Drysdale don't look like they're going to develop into stars?
Okay. So first part of it is
Mm-hmm.
Luchenko got misused. So I
Yeah.
didn't judge him harshly. I didn't judge him at all. Like that was half the problem with Canada, just in general, with all their problems. Uh, Z Williams going to be a star. You see that he's a star now. He was a star
Yep.
last year in Denver. He's going to continue to be a star. He'll probably come out after the end of this year. So I think that one's a pretty easy one. It wasn't just my opinion. I spoke to a highly noted draft guy after the draft and unprompted asked me what was the most surprising thing in the draft. And I said that the Flyers didn't draft Z Williams. Like that's just how I felt. And what was the last part of that?
Uh,
Oh, Drysdale
were
and
we?
York. It
Yeah.
has nothing to do with Drysdale and York. Um, if you know a guy's going to be this good and can be a number 1, you draft him, especially when you don't have a number 1, which they don't.
And it's something we talk about a lot of, best available versus, a needs-based pick. And I think for us in this situation, it was both.
It
He
was both.
was the best available, and the Flyers needed a number 1 or top pairing defenseman. And
Yep.
and we both thought that he had the potential to be a top pairing defenseman in the NHL and will certainly, I think, get there at some point. So I think it really is a need because I think we already knew uh, that the Flyers needed help on the blue line
Right.
at that point. So there is really no question there, and I still would have picked William at that point in the draft there. But yeah, also agree Luchenko's usage at World Juniors was not good, and neither was Bonk's for that matter. And
Not
I
good
think,
enough. I mean, the one game they
yeah,
put him on the bumper, he scored a goal. The next game they put him as the quarterback on the power play. Why? I don't know.
who knows? Who knows what goes on in the minds of Hockey Canada? But I think it was funny because I got into a conversation with like a random person on the street in New York about it. They were wearing like a Canada jersey, and I was like, sorry about your kids. And we got into it
Oh, listen,
about
it's not hard
about the
to.
coaching. I
Yeah.
know, I know. The last question, Cryptic Cowboy, responding to our Phantoms Tuesday episode. We had mentioned about them signing Zayde Wisdom. And he was like, why is that a priority? Are you living in bizarro world? And first off, we did say it was to an AHL contract. We did
Correct.
not say to an NHL contract. And for me, I think it's important to have players like that, who work hard and set a good example. And even if he hasn't been a huge success or have NHL potential, it's important for our prospects to be around guys that can set a tone, that can contribute, and that every day at the rink, they are going to do their absolute best. And that is Zayde Wisdom. And so I think he deserves another AHL deal
Yeah,
with the Phantoms.
I agree. Look at the improvement over last year. Point
Mhm.
wise, instead of being a -10, he's a +1. He's under average of 2 PIMs a game with the physical style that he plays. Like, this is a
Yeah.
good year for him. I guess your expectations must be so low of him that you just want to get rid of him. But my expectations are he could help a team, and helping an AHL team is good.
Yeah, and once again, we're not saying give him a two-way deal. We're just
No,
saying re-sign him with the Phantoms to an AHL deal.
that's it.
So
That's
just want
all
to
we
make
said.
that clear. All right, that will do it for today's show. We will be back tomorrow to talk Flyers versus Stars and begin our discussion of the Flyers quarter century team and dig into the forwards. As a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions and you want them answered like we did on today's show, let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at @rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology. Also on those same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert. Get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, everyone.